Alright everyone, so with Mafia 4 coming out, I decided for this channel I was going to play through the first 3 Mafia games. Now, I have never played a single Mafia game up until this point. Didn't play 1, didn't play 2, or 3. So for this video, we're going to be talking about Mafia, the definitive edition, and I literally just moments ago finished it. So I have a lot to say, and we're going to put that in this video. Mafia 2 and 3, the same type of video will be coming for each of them. So I want to start, and this is, I think, the best way to start it out, that this was one of the best experiences I had playing a mob game in maybe ever. Right? This might, in my opinion, I haven't played 2 or 3 yet, keep that in mind, this may go down as my favorite mob game ever. And the reason I say that, and the reason I bring that up, is because this game understands how to tell the story of being somebody who is in the mob. And it's funny because nothing that happened throughout the story I was able to predict. You could, obviously, you kind of understood from the beginning, and spoiler warning, if you don't want anything spoiled, please turn off the video now. If you're okay with spoilers, remain. I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers coming. Obviously, you understand that in some way, Tommy, your character, is, turning on family, right? You know that's going to happen because he's sitting there right at the end talking to the police. However, you don't know how that's going to happen, why that's going to happen, and it takes you through the whole story of how you get there. And there's a few things I think this game does great. First of all, the entirety of the setting, the ambiance, everything is perfect, right? I mean, you just feel like you're living in this world. You feel like you're in the mob. Now, I will say that the only thing I would tell you, if you're someone who's wondering whether you should get this game or not, is this is not your style of mob game where you're like, okay, we're going to take down this rival group and we're going to have some type of control. This is a narrative story. There is nothing here besides the story that they're telling. You know, a lot of times there will be, I remember, I forgot what Godfather game it was, but basically you were kind of taking over territory and doing this and doing that. That's not the case here, right? That is not the case. So just thought I would put that in. But the ambiance is perfect. Another thing I felt like is great is the shooting mechanics, because obviously, you know, a lot of games, you know, it's like you're just this, you'll be an average guy who picks up, you know, a gun here, and now you're like expert marksman, right? You're like the best with the firearm. And it's obviously for fun, but at the end of the day, it may not feel realistic. This game, one of the most interesting things about it to me was the whole time I was playing, I couldn't get out of my head how the gunplay felt good. It wasn't frustrating. I didn't feel like, oh man, this is terrible. But I also felt like it would be someone who's, okay, he could shoot a gun, but he's not, you know, this isn't, you know, someone on SEAL Team 6. And I felt like that was such a good way of being able to tell a mobster's, like, this is how it would feel to be a mobster. I thought that was another thing that was so perfect. The next, the connection you have with each character. There are multiple characters in this game that you have a pretty good connection with, and that keeps you throughout the whole story. Obviously, with, in this game, the wife Sarah, right, that becomes the driving connection to where things go. I thought it was interesting. There was a guy, Ralphie, who works in the shop, who has a stutter, and Paulie's kind of mean to him, but you're, throughout the whole thing, very nice to him the whole time. And first of all, I loved the fact that we were. It made me feel real good seeing that. But also, I found it interesting because at the end of the game, and here's another spoiler, at the end of the game, he's one of the guys that, because you turn, ends up going to jail. You turn on Ralphie. And to me, when I saw Ralphie, because at the end, the mob boss, you know, I really disliked him, and we'll get into, you know, the reasons for that. But Ralphie, you know, he was just another guy there. And so to turn on him, it shows you, and it made you feel the weight of what was happening, right? The weight of the turn that was going on.
He's still alive.
That's basically for the, you know, like the connections. You can't get much better than that. Having a connection. Even the moment when you actually kill the rival mob boss. It's kind of interesting because this whole game you're fighting against this rival mob boss, right? For, actually, I shouldn't say for the whole game, for maybe 65% of it, And then what happens is, as the success of your own family grows and grows and grows and grows, now it becomes more of an internal thing. And the twists and turns that you get at the end, like I said, I didn't see any of them coming. I thought for sure Paulie was going to be the guy that turns on you at some point. I thought he was going to turn on you over the money or something like that. None of that ended up happening. And so in that sense, that's, in my opinion, all the more reason that this game is awesome, because I wasn't sitting there like, oh, I know what's going to happen next. I know what's going to happen next. The only thing I knew is what they wanted you to know, which was at some point you're going to tell, you're going to turn on the family here, right? Basically, the only downside to this game, I would say, because there was this feature where you could get in a car and you could, as long as there wasn't a key part of the mission, you could literally just, fast travel right to the mission. And that was perfect because it kept the narrative going. It kept you in the story. It didn't take you out of the story. It didn't make you, be like, oh, God, okay, I got to drive here. Got to do this. It helped me it was like I was playing a game, but like an interactive movie in a sense, which I thought was awesome. The only downside, I think, at all, if I had to find a downside to this game, is number one, there is no freedom, right? And it's kind of weird because I can see both arguments, but the fact that one thing I couldn't help during this whole thing was that I felt like I had almost no control over anything that was going on, right? You were battling a rival mob boss, you were battling all these guys, but there was no like secondary thing you could do. There was no like, oh, maybe try this instead of this. It was pretty straightforward, which, like I said, is good and it's bad. I think it's good because the story they told, it kept you in the air. A lot of these open world games, they overwhelm you with stuff to do. So because of that, you're kind of in the story, but not in the story. You're doing these side things that don't necessarily matter. This game basically says none of that stuff matters. We're just going to keep you in the story. But when you are part of like, a family like this, right? Part of the mob family, you do kind of, you just felt like you were sitting there like, oh, there's really no, I have no say. I have no say. I have no say in anything, And to be fair, maybe that's how it would feel if you're not the mob boss in one of these families, right? If you're just one of these henchmen. But I just wanted to say that is maybe one downside to it. But before we are done with this video, I want to point out to me what was the number one part of this game, and that is its portrayal of somebody in the mob. A lot of times, especially in video games, right, because it's literally like a fantasy world, they'll take something and they'll give you the best version of it, right? So they'll take something and they'll say, this is the best kind of version of something. This game does not do that. What they do is they take, to me, and give an accurate portrayal of what the mob is like, right? This isn't a story about all this loyalty amongst, people in the mafia and how they're doing things, but they're really not bad. No, this is a story of somebody who started out as a taxi driver, right? He's just driving a taxi, and then unfortunate circumstances get him brought into the mob. And throughout his time, you see backstabbing and backstabbing and backstabbing. You see the brutal nature in which enemies are handled with. You see how quickly, just on a dime, somebody will be turned on. And you see through it your character, because I was rooting for my character throughout the whole thing, but then something happens and you're like, oh, wow, that was actually a really, rob a bank. That's really, really bad, right? That's terrible. So all of those things I felt were, I've never seen a game do it quite this way, where, and it really is how it goes, meaning one moment he's in the taxi, the next moment he's just a part of the family doing this and that, and then before you know it, you're in deep doing all these things, and there's no way out, right? The only way out is basically, as we saw, and then I was shocked. You turn obviously on the family, you end up in jail, you come out, and it's this nice ending of you with your wife, your kids, your family, and then the ending is you getting killed and your family's all right there, right? So the story ends with you were loyal, you saved your family from what could have happened, and it's a sad ending. I mean, it's a sad ending because it's everybody. Paulie obviously gets killed. It's a good ending, and then it's a sad ending, right? If it stops right at what was that wedding ceremony, there'd be no problem. But then, of course, it ends with you getting killed, and that's the sad part of it. So I have no clue what Mafia 2 is going to bring. I don't know if it follows the story, if it's a whole new story. But I will say that this game, if you have not, if you're a mob game enthusiast, if you're a fan of like these kind of narrative games that are like I said, and I've only known that I think the second is closer to this, and then the third is more open world. So after that, maybe we'll do another fourth video kind of comparing all of them. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. All right, everyone. So before Mafia 4 comes out, we wanted to go back and play Mafia 2 Definitive Edition. We did Mafia 1 already. You can go check out that video, but this is going to be us looking at Mafia 2. Now, one of the interesting things about this is I had never played any of the Mafia games until I played them through this time around. So keep that in mind. I had a fresh look at all of these games. Now we're going to be doing Mafia 3, obviously do Mafia 4 coverage, and all throughout this we're going to be kind of comparing them. But in this video I do want to talk more about Mafia 2 and comparing them to any of the other ones. After we finish 3, we're going to do a separate video comparing all of them. Okay, so let's get right into it. The things I like, the things I didn't. Now let's start with the pros. I like starting with the pros, and the cons aren't too many, but I do think they are important. So first, on the pros, I have to say the music in this game was phenomenal. It might seem like a small thing, right? But when I'm saying music, I'm talking in a lot of ways. We're talking about the ambiance, but the music to me is the most, like that's the part that hits, right? That's the part that really hits me, and specifically before you go to prison. So, sorry for the spoiler if you hadn't played yet.
We'll see.
I apologize, but when you do go to prison after that, it's not that the music and the theme and the ambiance, all that isn't good, the setting, right? But it's just that first part of the game, it put me right in the mood of that time period. And the music just hit. It was, some of them were Christmas themed because it was snowing out. It just was phenomenal. So,
who the fuck they are.
Might seem like a small thing, but I'm telling you that even in Mafia 1, this is one of the comparisons we'll do. When I got in the car, I wasn't even really paying attention to the radio. I was kind of turning it off. In this game, radio, every time I'm putting it on classics and I'm letting it go, and that was really a big part, and it does really put you in that time period. The clothes, the people, the cars, everything puts you right in that time. Okay, so that was big. The next pro I have is the story's phenomenal, right? And this is what I was talking about. This is a game of narrative, right? This is a story-based game. It's not that the gameplay isn't good or is terrible, but we're here for the story. And there are a ton of twists and turns in this game that really will knock you up on the head, okay? Spoilers, a lot of them are coming, so if you don't want another one, please, click out now. For starters, the first major one, you going to prison. Did not see that coming. Not only you going to prison, but you going to prison for a significant amount of time. It's one of those things where you're expecting something to happen, and nothing ever does, and you end up in jail. And it is a really cool kind of sidetrack from that part of the game. Another one, right? You find out that you actually killed the person you played in Mafia 1 at the end of Mafia 1.
There's no need for violence.
Spoiler, okay?
Please,
the character that you're playing.
You don't want no trouble.
Don't look
that way. You don't want a spoiler on Mafia 1.
Now, looks
like 3 seconds, 3, 2, 1. He
ends
up, kind of ratting on everybody to save his family, and then at the end, you see this really nice thing, happy moment, he's talking, but then you see him get killed, and it turns out that in this game, the guy you're playing, the two buddies, Vito and Joe, they're the ones that actually kill him. Which I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but I'll say this. What a moment that was. That was one where I jumped off my chair. That was insane. And then there's just a bunch of other twists and turns all throughout of things that you're doing. Okay, and the ending is probably the biggest one where you didn't need to, but you save yourself and your friend ends up getting killed after he trusted you, right? And it's not your fault. But it's one of the things that I think Mafia does perfect. Both the games I've played so far, I'm going to play the third one for the next video. Haven't played it yet, but for these first 2, there's a lot of times when you play a game like this where it's not that they sugarcoat the topic,
known each
but
other for a long
I don't
time,
think they
Vito.
accurately
Think of all the
portray
little
what it would be like
You
to
dive
be
in and try
in
to
the
save
mob.
him?
You know,
Because
there's a
you
lot of
wouldn't
games
stay
that I play
underwater.
that kind of take a serious
Vito, you
topic
swore an oath.
and,
I was
you know,
there.
let's take
Our
like a war
loyalty to
game,
the family
like
is
Call of
greater
Duty
than
or
to
something
our
like
own
that, right? Where,
families.
Tell
you know,
that to my mother.
you're not getting any of the
Should I
real
kill him? No,
impact
not here.
of what
We'll
war is
settle
really
things
like.
with
You
him
know, war is
later.
brutal. War is, you know, is one of the worst
You
things on the
disappoint
planet.
me,
It's
Vito.
terrible, right? There is so much suffering there,
You
and when you're
really
kind of
do.
running around, just shooting things, and it, like, no,
I'm gonna do a
it
hell
just
of a lot
doesn't
more than
give you
disappoint you, Derek.
the gravity of what war actually is. This game gives you the gravity of being someone in the mob
Your
during
dad's
this time
not
period.
now.
Right, where
Get that
people
fuck
are
before he
just
runs
turning
away.
on
Time
each
to
other
teach
left
that
and
fat
right.
fuck a
It's
lesson.
a dirty
Hey, where'd you get
business.
that?
It's,
Doesn't
you know,
matter.
there's death, there's killing. You have to do so many different things.
Okay, the
All
odds
of
are
that,
even. Now let's
I think, is accurately portrayed in this,
follow me,
and
guys.
that is, you know,
Shouldn't be doing
to me,
this.
the most
Vito can
important. If
handle
you're making a
himself.
mafia game, that's for, about the mafia.
go,
You
Vito.
have to
We
get
got your
that,
back.
and they hit that out of the park. So those are my two really big pros. I do like the gunplay. The fight segments, they had fights in here. Those are really cool. There's a lot of really awesome things. And it may seem like those aren't a ton of pros because we really just went over a few, but that's like the game, right? I mean, we're talking about those are the number one things, and it hits it out of the park. So the cons are going to be maybe a little bit more, but they're going to be smaller. Okay, so these are, even though they're only a few things we mentioned, they're so big that they carry the game. Okay, the cons are a little bit smaller, but I think are still pretty important. And just to, I felt like I should get them out there. So the first is the police. They're not good, and it's one of those things where I'm fine with it. Like, this is a con about the game that I don't really care about, but it is a con where the police are basically useless. They can do nothing to you. You could commit whatever crime you want, and as long as you just run past them, you're good. I did like in this game, I didn't think they had it in Mafia 1 at all, but I did like in this game where cops actually did have some smart things, like they would know your car, they would know your clothes, like they could track those type of things, which I felt like was really cool. I don't remember too many games actually doing that, right? Problem is, like I said, they were useless, and there was, I'll give you a perfect example from the playthrough that I just did. So there was a mission, and basically I had to tail somebody, right? I had to tail someone. I couldn't be seen by the person, right? I wasn't supposed to be seen, but also I had to follow them. So I didn't realize that at first because I don't know how I didn't realize it, but I didn't, and I literally just
Okay, the odds are even.
sped
Now
as
let's teach that
fast as I
fat
could
fuck a lesson.
into
All right.
this car I was supposed to be
Follow me,
tailing.
guys.
Remember, they don't
Crazy
need, they're not supposed to see me.
Shouldn't be doing this.
So the meter
Vito can
starts kind
handle
of going.
himself.
They have like a
So
clock in the
that's the
corner
fight
that
we're
shows
gonna
like you
Let's
got to
go,
get out of the
Vito.
zone by this time or they'll see you. They didn't end up seeing me. However, a cop saw me, and so a cop was now pissed, right? He's coming at me to give me a ticket because he just saw me crash into another car. So I'm tailing this car, and obviously when you're tailing, you're not going at full speed. You're keeping up with their speed. And when I tell you, the police officer behind me was tailing me basically. He wasn't, I was able to beat the cops, okay, and get away from them while I was tailing somebody else at like half speed. That just shows you how bad they are. So the cop AI is useless, and it's really terrible, you know. And it's funny because there's times where, you know, you could I literally hit a cop car once, and they didn't get pissed at all. They were fine. There's another time where I went by a cop a little bit slow, and he got pissed. It's just not good. There is too much driving in this game, and one of the things I loved about the first one. Now, if there is a setting and I missed it, please put that in the comment section below because I don't want to give this a bad rap. But this game has way too much driving. In Mafia 1, one of the best parts of it was there was a setting which I had never really seen in too many games before. I mean, there's fast travel, but this was a way easier way to do it, where if there was a mission you had to drive through, or there was somewhere you had to drive, as long as it wasn't part of the mission, so it's not a, like, okay, this is some kind of car chase, you can't do it. But if it's not part of the mission, it's just you getting from point A to point B, you could skip the driving completely. They dropped it right where the mission started. It was such a game save. It was so wonderful. This game, they, like I said, I couldn't find the settings, so I'm pretty sure they got rid of it. This game is the worst in this setting, okay? It will have you driving to the mission over here, and then you have to drop off. If you have a partner, you're dropping off partner Joe, and then you have to drive back to your house. And you were doing this all the time, and it was so frustrating because it just felt like this was elongating the game. For Mafia 1, I was in the story going boom, 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 story, and then in this one, it felt like, okay, I want to get to the next mission, but I have to drive here instead of just being able to skip it. And now, the thing about Mafia 1 is you could have kept both, right? In Mafia 1, you have both options. So if you're someone who's like, no, I like the driving portion, fine, you could still drive. But I did not want to, right? I was preferring to, and it's not that I didn't want to drive anywhere, but it'd be one thing if they're like, okay, we're going to make you drive this time, but you only have to go to the mission. This one, you had to go to the mission, had to drop something off, drop somebody off, and you drop yourself off. Like, there were so many things like that, and it was really, I thought, I was like, I probably wouldn't have cared as much if I hadn't had the experience of the first game, where I could just go mission to mission to mission. Okay, my final con of the day is the economy in the game. So there is now Mafia 1, there was basically none of this, right? There was kind of something like this, but not really, right? This game is a little bit more open world. Actually, I shouldn't say a little bit. This game's a lot of it, okay, more open world than Mafia 1. There are places you can buy weapons. There's a place where you can take cars and get them. You could steal a car and go sell it at this place, which is pretty cool. You know, there were clothing places. So there is some semblance of you know, an economy, and there's ways to get money without actually, like, unlike Mafia 1, like, there are various ways to get money here, and you do get money. The problem is that number one, there wasn't a ton of time to actually go do this kind of stuff,
not to make the same mistakes my
because
old
a
man
lot of the missions, you just go back to your place, you go to sleep, like,
in his
you kind of have to go
footsteps.
out of
It's
your
good to
way to
finally know
not
the
do the
truth, though.
mission in that. I just didn't
Death
think
also
they
helped
gave you a lot of
resolve
opportunity to be like, yeah, go and do this. Right now, there were missions where you would go, okay, buy some weapons, stuff like that, but sometimes you'd end up losing those weapons because of, you know, like, there was one mission where you get kind of, you go to save Joe, get captured, you lose your guns in that one, even though you can get them back, not the ones you had, but you can get other ones back by killing guys. It just didn't feel right. And also, you continually gained and lost all your money. So, like,
Derek's
when
retirement funds.
The first part of it, right, you get all, you start building your way up, you get arrested, you lose your money. Then there's another time later in the game where you get all this money and you lose it almost immediately because people set your house on fire. It's just like you constantly are losing money you got and then getting it back, and losing money you got and getting it back, and there's just not a ton of stuff to spend it on. So there was, like, kind of a bare bones economy in this game, and there was a lot of cool things. Like, I thought the stealing the cars, like, the fact that you could steal cars and go sell them to this guy, I thought was a really cool mechanic. It was really cool, just no real reason for it, right? That is kind of the problem. But those are the cons, and it might seem like, oh wow, you know, I didn't like the game or something like that. I want to be clear, it's the complete opposite of that, right? To me, the pros I mentioned are actually the meat and potatoes, right? They're the most important part of the game, whereas everything else is kind of just small parts of the game. That, you know, the fact that the driving was the way it was, and I still enjoyed it, tells you a lot about this game, right? It tells you a lot about this game. So thank you all for watching. I cannot wait to play Mafia 3, and then of course I cannot wait to play Mafia 4. We're going to be doing videos after Mafia 3. We're going to do one video comparing all of these together, which one I think is the best. Then we're going to be doing a Mafia 4 coverage, and I'll let you guys know if I think that one is better than these three. But between the two, I guess I can give a little bit of a insight into what I'm thinking now. If I had to choose between the two, I think I slightly would still choose Mafia 1. Oh, actually, this brings up one more con, I guess I could say. It's kind of a pro and a con. The pro is, I think there was a host of really cool characters in this one, maybe even more than the first one, I will say. This one has a lot more characters that I think are, like, really
Good afternoon,
unique
sir.
and cool. There were some in the first one as well, but not quite to this level. And it's
Did you
tough
feel
because
the
I will
light?
say though the
That's real
characters you're
stuff.
closest with, like in this one, Joe, there's a real connection with Joe, obviously, but
Oh,
maybe in
excuse
the
me, sir.
first one there were Paulie and I forget the other guy's name now, but there was that connection too. So in terms of the characters that are closest to you, maybe even the first one has better characters, but overall I
Ah,
think there's
damn it.
more unique ones and cooler ones overall in the second one. But I think I have to go the first one. I just felt like the problem is with number two is that especially after I see him kill the guy you played as in Mafia One, I just didn't like the character the same way I did in Mafia One. Mafia One, I was actually rooting, even though we were doing some bad stuff. I was rooting for my character, right? I was rooting for him to get out of the business, like especially at the end. It's like this is great, right? We're getting out until he has to get shot. In this one, your character Vito, your character, and Joe are kind of just assholes. I mean, they're not. I understand they're in the mob here, anyways, right? So it's like they're not going to be great, but at least in the first one, you kind of see how he gets dragged into the mob unwillingly in a way, and then it kind of escalates. Whereas with this, like this guy's got his mom telling him not to do this, and he just continually gets in trouble and does stupid stuff, and he kind of never learns from any of his mistakes. So it's just tougher to root for the character in Mafia 2. It's a lot easier to root for the character in Mafia 1. And so for that reason, and with a few of the I think Mafia 1 is as close to a perfect game in a lot of ways. And I'm not talking about the lack of bugs and stuff like that, but in terms of characters and story, I think they did everything right in Mafia 1. And then Mafia 2 is very close, but it's got a little bit of flaws. So thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time. All right, everyone. So we are playing Mafia 3 before Mafia 4 comes out. And it was interesting because Mafia 1 and 2, I've always heard that they're pretty good games, but I never truly had played them and didn't really have any thoughts going in. There was nothing I was like, oh, this is how I feel about Mafia 1 and 2. Mafia 3 is a different story. I didn't have feelings about it before I'd even played it. I had always kind of figured it was the worst one in the series by far, and that's just what I thought. Had never played it, just thought that's what I had heard. So when I ended up playing the game, I was actually really surprised at how much I liked it. I loved it, actually. I thought it was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had in quite some time. I liked the, different things you could, you could capture these areas and you can call in someone with ammo, you can get the cops off you. There were just so many really cool systems that obviously were in the other Mafia games. There also was really a more you driven story, right? The first two Mafia games, when you're looking at them and you're playing through them, you're following a story that's already laid out. This one, it feels like you're a little bit controlling your own destiny in a way. And I understand there's still an overarching story, but it's not as direct. And that has positives and negatives. There's multiple endings in this game. There is this system of being able to give territory. Like, I felt like there was a lot of really, 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 really cool stuff in this game, and I did enjoy playing it. I thought the combat was great. I loved sneaking around and being able to it just was one of those things where even though it was very repetitive, and I know a lot of people, that's true, right? It was very repetitive. I know a lot of people that would be a deal breaker for them. That was not a deal breaker for me. I don't mind repetitive games when I find the repetition to be fun, right? When I find what you're doing actually to be fun. That's how I felt in this one. And I was shocked by that because I really didn't think I was going to like it. And I did. Like I said, there's multiple endings. There's all these, there is a lot of replayability with this game as it pertains to, the game just keeps you there and there is so much to do. With that being said, I completely understand still, and this might seem like it doesn't make much sense. I completely understand still why many don't like this game and why many think it's the worst in the series. And that is because it's nothing like the other ones. The other ones, and we're going to do a larger video comparing them. It's not going to be like a 50-minute video, big retrospective, but I just want to talk about the difference between the three. The thing about this game is that it's not like 1 and 2. 1 and 2 had differences, but they were very similar. 3 could have you could have put a different, like, had they put, like, any different title on this game, I would have never thought it would have been a Mafia game. You know what I mean? Like, the only reason this feels like any of the other games is because of the title and the fact that Vito is in it. Other than that, nothing, right? And other than that, there's basically no tie to the rest of it in the way it plays. And I do think that is one thing that I thought hurt the game, meaning I think it tried to lean in to the old style and have its own new style. I think it should have just embraced the new style. The best part of the game to me was when you were taking down the big family. The problem is, first of all, to get to that moment, you have to play for quite some time, right? To get to the place where you're um, starting to take down the family that screwed you over and killed, the people you cared about the most. That's one. And number two, there's so many like side missions and all of this other stuff to do that it just never feels like the same way the original games did, where you're just going from one thing to another within the story. And I think that really, really hurts this game. I should have been playing what we were playing in the last couple of hours right off the jump. Like, I think those first missions should have been you basically, have the same first mission, and then the second mission, have it be you going in and trying to get like, I just feel like it took me so long to get to the point where I wanted, where I was having really the most fun, that I don't know. I think that really hurt the game. I think it was trying to keep both. And then there was one set of missions where, you go and you're basically stopping a nuke from being transferred to people that shouldn't have them. And I thought it was a fun mission. I had no problem with it. But it just took me away from the actual game. And I realize now that maybe that was an optional mission. It didn't say optional, I didn't think. But still, just the fact that it was there, I think takes away a little bit from what I thought was the best part of the game. And I understand, like I said, they want to have different missions, and I have no problem with having the side missions and having this and that. The point I'm making is just it's not like the other Mafia games, and so I completely understand why people were kind of like, this is not for me, and especially because I do think there is this section of time where you got to get past this, first part of the game to get to the part that I enjoyed the most. And so my guess is a lot of people probably just said, I'm done. Screw it. I'm not going to be doing that. That's just my guess. And maybe some still played it all the way through. And like I said, there is repetition. Okay. And I understand why a lot of people don't like that. I've always been a fan. I always bring up the game Crackdown. Very, simple game, but I loved it so much. It has so much replayability to me just because of how it's formatted. And I think this game, there is a lot of freedom for you to do these missions the way you want to do them, and I like that. But it's also a downside because the story isn't as strong as maybe it would have been in the other ones, just because the other games, you're right in it, right? It's all dialogue driven, whereas this is kind of, I think, trying to do a little bit of too many things. So thank you all for watching, and we will do a video comparing all three of them at some point. We'll see you next time.